It is a technical problem, but it's also a strategic problem, meaning there are nuances about AI that are a little different than traditional software. What leaders need to realize is that the framework doesn't need to change. It's only sort of execution of specific tasks. And it's not that hard to become proficient in that. Don't run from what you know, lean into it, pick up a few new tricks along the way, and you're going to be good to go.
Welcome to Beyond Boundaries, the podcast from Kainos that helps business leaders navigate the fast-evolving world of AI. I'm Gareth Workman, Chief AI Officer at Kainos, and today we're focusing on the challenge of keeping AI secure. So as AI becomes more embedded in our business operations and decision-making, the question is shifting from how we build it to how we protect it. And we're talking about adversarial AI, the risk of new systems being misled, manipulated, or exploited. But this isn't about fear, it's about being ready. So joining me today are two world-leading experts who bring extraordinary depth to the conversation. So first, I have John Sotiropoulos, who is Head of AI Security, whose global experience spans DCIT, NIST, and OWASP, from shaping international standards to securing national skill systems. John, welcome. It's great to have you here.
Great to be here, Gareth.
I'm also delighted to be joined by Hyrum Anderson, Director of AI and Security at Cisco, whose career spans research and leadership roles at MIT Lincoln Lab, Microsoft, and Robust Intelligence. A pioneer in adversarial AI and red teaming, Hyrum has advised both US and UK governments on AI safety. So Hyrum, thank you for being here today and welcome to Beyond Boundaries.
It's great to be with you, Gareth and John.
Thanking you. So, Brendan, let's dive right in because there's a lot explored in today's conversation. So to start us off, John, I'm going to come to you first. So many leaders are just starting to hear the term adversarial AI. So could you explain it in kind of simple terms and why it's relevant in the boardroom level today?
If you think about adversarial AI, it's effectively manipulating intelligence systems to fool themselves, to make their own decisions. Think about it like the social engineering of AI, where you lead the system to do things that you didn't expect it to do, whether it's bypass decisions, extract data, get their own decisions. That's the type of thing that we see with adversarial AI. And Hyrum has also written a great book on adversarial AI, so maybe Hyrum can add to that.
Yeah, it'd be great for your perspective as well.
Yeah, it used to be that adversarial AI was relegated to academia, an esoteric study of what you could do algorithmically to make a machine learning system go wrong. And I think two major things have happened that makes this relevant to everybody. Number one is that software is changed by AI. AI is software today, and every software system is adapting that. And second, one learning that we've had over recent years with, ChatGPT jailbreaks and whatever, is that it doesn't take an algorithm to make these systems at runtime come down. So it's no longer just the realm of academia. But the purpose is the same, is that when there is an adversary present, software systems built on AI can behave unexpectedly to their advantage.
Yeah. And you say, and that's the thread we're going to pull today and give a little more insights. So John, you've worked with OWASP, NIST, DCIT, around this space. So what trends are you seeing emerge around threats, and what should business leaders be thinking about in terms of their response?
I think Hyrum started that thread there. It used to be, and we still see dozens of academic papers talking about specific adversarial AIs that's a very, very narrowly defined. But then generative AI with a natural language interface makes it really, really easy to manipulate that. And also agentic AI begins to have consequences beyond what we expected. From data exfiltration, from trust manipulation, we have seen examples where a very simple, at OWASP, a very simple co-pilot, because it's trusted so much, people can use email to create what we call indirect prompt injections. In other words, put things there that are interpreted as system commands and exfiltrate data. So we're beginning to see with agentic AI and with generative AI, something that used to be academic now becoming part of the mainstream and creating new attack surfaces.
Cool. Hyrum, in terms of kind of your experience, you've seen kind of lots of different industries. Do you see how these threats are kind of being addressed, or can you see some of these things happening, or other examples?
Yeah, actually, gratefully, security leaders already have kind of the tools, most of the tools necessary to tackle this problem. As John and I have been mentioning, fundamentally, these are software systems, and the kinds of risk mitigations and controls are still appropriate with a few wrinkles, right? With a few things that you need to sort of upgrade. And I've been really gratified to see forward-leaning organizations who have sort of active risk management programs lean in to how they're adopting AI, and this becomes something that I think will be a strategic advantage to them, meaning that they're not going to let AI fear slow them down. They're gonna mitigate. They're gonna control the risk, and they're gonna push forward with their AI strategies in a bold way. And I think that's gonna be a strategic advantage for them.
That's fabulous. You've hit something else I'd love to kind of hear your thoughts on, Hyrum, and I'm going to apologize for this first, because sometimes security can often be labeled unfairly as that sort of blocker to progress. From your perspective, how can building that resilience and adversarial threats become that kind of strategic or competitive advantage? How do you see that kind of playing out?
Yeah, the enduring advantages of AI will come from those that are safe and secure. Ultimately, you see this actually. This is the long game. And you've seen this happen historically. Think about, what Apple considers its competitive advantage with privacy, or now what Microsoft Azure, how they market security as a competitive advantage. This will be the competitive advantage. In the near term, there definitely needs to be controls in place. You can't just let everybody run to Hugging Face and download whatever and start, right? There's both application security considerations as well as enterprise security, but those can mostly be addressed with your existing kind of risk management frameworks and plans.
Yeah, but it's really interesting. You say like lots of organizations now are really majoring on how much they're doing in the security of their platform to be that advantage, that building and engendering that trust. Do you think that people assumed are implied, but actually they're going out of their way to illustrate how much is going in here?
Yeah. Can I give it like a couple cool examples?
Of course you can.
We're working with a company who decided early on that for the first few weeks of them getting the AI craze, they had to block all of Hugging Face. But then they figured out controls where they could let in and allow their developers to really download and experiment with these models in a way that was safe for them. So before this whole idea became a fire in CISO's minds, they were there and they were exploring that risk and preparing so that they could have a head start in that space. Another simple example is at sort of runtime and how people are allowing their developers to use service platforms to scale their AI. And like just defining what the risk is, understanding and accepting in many cases what that risk is, so that they can allow their developers to really run fast with AI.
And I think, I want us to stay a little bit on that risk element, because I think actually how cybersecurity becomes a competitive advantage and a competitive edge is when it stops being all or nothing. And I think, Hyrum, with the examples we're given, that all or nothing, either you run away from AI, which is a vulnerability, or you block everything, which actually doesn't progress anything. By understanding the risks, and we always recommend, and we're seeing organizations here in the UK, and that's the explicit guidelines, using threat modeling technique that we highly recommend. You don't just accelerate security, you actually understand what your system does. You become in control of the narrative. And that really, for me, is what it makes resilience not a break, but it makes an accelerator for innovation. And that's why security can help you.
That's very cool, John. So maybe just pulling a bit more in that kind of thread of vendors that are kind of really pushing and illustrating what they're doing. So, John, what sort of things should leaders be asking of the AI vendor to ensure their systems are secure by design? What sort of things should you do to lean into that space?
I think they should stop asking, "Is it secure?" That's not a question they should be asking, because the answer will always be you. I think they should evaluate how they're going to use a system. And they should, again, I'll come back to threat model, maybe a lightweight version of that, understand how that fits in there, what are the threats and risks, and then ask the vendor how the vendor actually mitigates those risks. Are they logging the data when they use a model? Are they secure by design? Those are the things I would be asking.
Very cool. Hyrum, is there anything you'd kind of want to add? Is there things you would be guiding people to say to speak to their vendors or their product suppliers?
I think where we see people who are adopting AI finding the most things to be concerned about and control have to do with kind of bleeding edge adoption of agentic systems when third-party systems are involved. And it's mostly about, as John mentioned, sort of like, where is the data going for data loss prevention types of concerns. And it's also a lot about identity. What sorts of privileges is my agentic system that I'm developing inheriting from a user or inheriting from the developer? And it should always be from the user, of course, not the developer.
Cool. So one of the things, Hyrum, I'm gonna switch a little bit here. So adversarial AI often gets framed as a technical issue, but it's clearly there's a leadership dimension here. So what's the mind shift do you think leaders need to make to embed trust and security into their broader AI strategy, as it were?
Yeah, it is a technical problem, but it's also a strategic problem, meaning there are nuances about AI that are a little different than traditional software. So examples of that is, if I can patch a CVE, it's really hard to patch an open source model, right? So there are other ways to do those kinds of things. But what leaders need to realize is that the framework doesn't need to change. It's only sort of execution of specific tasks. And it's not that hard to become proficient in that, find the right tooling that that controls for those risks. So my advice would be, don't run from what you know, lean into it, pick up a few new tricks along the way, and you're going to be good to go.
Fabulous. John, in terms of kind of that leadership maturity, but what about the gaps, the bright spots that stand out to you? What do you think are the obvious things they're maybe missing?
I think understanding is the biggest missing piece at the moment. And I think treating security as something that's out there instead of integrating it as a culture is the biggest risk that I see. And you see all kind of AI security influencers out there publishing zillions and zillions of vulnerabilities and threats that may never happen to you. Kind of take you a little bit away from what you need to do. And what you need to do is what Hyrum was referring to. Understand the risk, do an evaluation of what you have, the tools, and uplift your cybersecurity to be able to mitigate. For sure, you need some new techniques there. I think a bigger change that as an organization you face is you used to worry about uptime all the time. With adversarial AI, yes, it's technical, but what it does is trust becomes the new uptime. And you need to kind of address that as part of your thinking and your cybersecurity.
Can I just jump in and, John's too humble to toot his own horn, but all of the listeners need to look at the work that John has been doing with OWASP in particular about how to secure AI and agentic AI systems. That work is going to be a bellwether for people to compare to for years to come. So I'd recommend that you take a look at that.
Thank you, Hyrum. And you're part of that work too.
Well said, Hyrum. And maybe that, we talked about businesses that maybe haven't lent in heavily, but are maybe early in their journey, Hyrum. Beyond kind of what you're sharing, obviously the great stuff with John, but what other small steps do you think they could take today to kind of reduce risk or build trust in systems and data? Those taking those tentative steps and they don't want to end up in fear or stall, what sort of things do you think they should be doing?
Yeah, for people who are still dipping their toe in the water, that's good to internally dip your toe before you sort of maybe release a public AI product. While you're doing that, now is the time to invest. Threat modeling. Another one I'd add is, when we say the word red teaming, it can sound so sophisticated. Actually, you just need to put on the role of an angry user and see what can go wrong to understand. Really, it's not that sophisticated what you need to do. A red teaming exercise stems from a methodology that you will have, and the findings you have are not magic. They come from you trying to be just conscientious about this methodology. a 1 week, a 1-man-week investment is going to surprise you about the kinds of things that you find that will help you to measure and manage the risk before you decide to go public with your product.
But it's amazing, as you say, sometimes that like things that do appear in the lab just miraculously appear in the real world, and that's just eye-opening.
And especially with a large language model that can respond differently to small changes in the input.
Yeah.
You know, like
the
unit test never will bring it up, right?
Yeah. So John, I'm going to ask you a slightly different thing. So, again, in terms of kind of security and innovation teams, how do you get them working more closely together so that you avoid that friction so that you can move fast, but also stay secure?
I think this is the culture shift that we need to make for couple of things need to happen. We need to be more risk-based rather than either or, and we cover that with Hyrum earlier on. And the other one is develop that secure by design from the beginning so that we accelerate innovation. But I think we also have to face realities. And the reality is that we have outstretched cyber teams. They have new legislation coming in, the Cyber Resilience Bill. And as once someone said, I'm drowning and you showing the water. So I think there are opportunities for innovation in AI to help teams accelerate monitoring, this is where tools can help to the innovation. But really is putting, instead of making a checkbox, making it a culture that becomes part of building systems. And either you start for new things with threat modeling, secure by design, or, and people will do that, if you have something out there, the red teaming suggestion Hyrum was making is a must.
Perfect. So one of the things we always try and do at Boundaries is help leaders, not just understand what's happening in AI, but what to do next. So I'm going to ask you both a question that gets to the heart of where this is all heading. So Hyrum, I'm going to come to you first. So when you imagine that kind of the future secure, resilient AI, what does it look like? And equally, what can leaders be doing today to help shape that future?
Yeah, first I would call it a future of secure and resilient software. And AI is a component that's maybe not even integral, but pervasive in it, with systems cooperating with each other. And what it means to be secure, again, I'm going to refer to OWASP. You'll see a great roadmap in that work. You're gonna see that there are controls in place to handle identity, least privilege principles that are always a part of software systems that still are sort of being adopted by agentic systems. The future is one in which you can ask an agent powered by AI to do something, and it will have the appropriate permissions to access the appropriate systems and no more, and can take autonomous action only with delegated authority from the user. And according to my permission level, right? And those results can then be reviewed before potentially actually taking action.
But you say it's just that, those guardrails to make sure it's a controlled process. And in the same way we've done with many years of kind of access control, it's that it's least privileged and appropriate.
I'll also say that, like, so much, of course, the future is shaped by the present. I think we're going to look back in 5 years and think of today with AI sort of like how we're all thinking of a 2400 kbaud modem dial-up, where, like, in terms of speed and sophistication and security, all those things, like, it's here and we have the connection, but it's actually still in its infancy. There's so much more to come.
Perfect. Excellent. Thank you for that, Hyrum. And John, over to you. So from your vantage point, what do you see rising to the top of every leader's agenda if they're serious about building secure AI?
Ask your cybersecurity team, are you ready to handle AI, and have that conversation, not as a, not as a checklist, not as a demand, but really creating a culture where the cyber team understands those threats. Because as Hyrum said, we have secured applications before. This isn't any different. We saw it in the cloud too. We all said, oh my goodness, the cloud, how are we going to secure it? We did, we just upgraded, uplifted cyber. Unless we talk to cyber and unless we make it part of that conversation, I think there will be silos, and this is where the next breach is going to happen.
Perfect. Perfect. So look, thank you both. So we've covered a lot of ground today. So again, understanding of adversarial AI, exploring how leaders can embed its security, you're trusted into their AI strategies. But before we close out, I kind of want to bring it back to mindset, because how leaders think about AI and security is just as important as what they do. So I've got one final question for both of you, and it's going to be the same question. So John, I'm going to lean into yourself first. So if you could leave a business leader with one mind shift about AI and security, what would it be?
I will repeat myself. Don't treat AI security as a checkbox. Treat it as a culture. Make sure that cyber is part of the conversation of what AI does for you.
It's clear and concise. Lovely. Hyrum, yourself, what's your one-liner?
A similar take is that don't treat AI as a distinct piece of software. The future is that it is software. AI is changing software, and so it's in some ways changing security. But keep your fundamentals and your risk mindset.
Fantastic, both. Thank you very much. So lots for our listeners to reflect on. So that brings us to the end of the episode of Beyond Boundaries. So John, Hyrum, thank you both for such powerful and thought-provoking conversation. It's clear that building secure and resilient AI isn't just a technical challenge, but a leadership one. So if anyone have final thoughts you just want to leave, or
there's a ton of resources there. OWASP, check NIST. There's a lot of work coming out of the UK and AI institutes on AI security. So there's a lot of reference material to look forward to learn more.
There is momentum, use it, and I'm sure in the years to come, we'll look back and say, why did we ever worry? That would be security as business as usual.
Wise words, John. So that, and for our listeners, the final message is clear. Security isn't just something you bolt on later. It's a mindset to adopt early, as responsibility to lead, and ultimately a catalyst for building trust in an AI future. So thank you for listening to us today.
Thanks, Gareth.
At Kainos, we're committed to helping you harness the power of AI responsibly while navigating the evolving landscape of trust, resilience, and ethical innovation. If you found today's conversation valuable, don't forget to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And for more insights, visit kainos.com/beyond boundaries. We'll be back next time to explore another big question at the intersection of AI and business. Until then, stay curious, stay innovative, and let's go beyond boundaries together.